Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about how much potency you actually need to do most of the content available in the game. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is because when I've been streaming, a lot of people have been asking me, hey, Caro, I just started the game. How much potency should I be looking at or should I be aiming for? I currently have X amount of potency. Is it good enough? Well, in today's video, we're going to discuss this. So the very first thing I want to talk about is of course the Dechem armors. This is the starter armor that you get for hitting level 65. Remember, our max level is currently 100, so when you're progressing through the game, you're naturally going to get this as you are completing the main storyline. Now, are these armors good? Yes, they are very good as starter armors. Now, should you stick with this forever? No, you definitely want to upgrade and move on from this piece of armor as soon as possible. Now, the reason for this is simply because the armor itself does not give you that many stats. Now, the augments that are on the armor do give you quite a bit of potency. As you can see right here, you do get 248% potency all around. So that means melee potency, range potency, as well as technique potency, which is pretty awesome. Now, do keep in mind, this is because I do have a weapon equipped. If I unequip my weapon and we look at just the armors alone, it only gives 152.4% potency. Now, as for the weapon, you guys should all be making an Acosalio weapon, because there are so many campaigns going on right now that literally make your life super easy to make Acosalio weapons. We literally have players who have made 13 of these weapons already, and they're still making more for God knows what reason. But nevertheless, it's very easy to make this now. There's enhancement boost campaigns, there's augmentation aid campaigns, there's Meseta discounts, there's a ton of stuff going on, which will allow you to make your Acosalio weapon very easily. Now, something that a lot of people forget about is make sure to change your EX augments on your Acosalio weapon. I have an entire video on how to make these weapons. I'll link it in the description below. Keep in mind, there are two separate videos, one specifically for weapons and one specifically for armors. You definitely want to make sure that you put your EX level 2 augments onto your weapon before you add in the rest of your other augments, as if you do it the other way around, you're going to have to redo your augments, and that's going to cost you time as well as materials. But nevertheless, as you can see here, we've got some EX augments and we filled up the rest with LC augments. Don't worry, these are very easy to obtain. However, after you've made your weapon and you're still using the Dechem armors, the next step is to actually upgrade to your Acostasis armors. As you can see over here, I've actually made a bunch of Acostasis armors. We're going to equip them right now. So Acostasis 1, 2, and 3. And now that we've equipped those armors, you can see that our potency has increased to 269% potency. Very nice. You may have noticed that I have a lot more range potency versus the other potencies, and this is dependent on how you want to build your character. And for the majority of players, you usually just play one weapon type and you really like a very specific weapon, and you usually just stick with one class as well as one weapon. However, let's say that you do want to play multiple weapons or multiple classes. That's okay. Just understand that each weapon requires different potencies. For example, melee weapons require melee potency, range weapons require range potency, and technique weapons require technique potency. However, it might not be clear for a lot of players on what type of potency you actually need. For example, a gun blade, it's a gun and it's a blade. What type of potency does it actually need? Well, all you need to do is look at the little picture next to the weapon. As you can see, this little picture of the gun blade, it has a blue background. Blue background means that it needs range potency, because again, when we head over to our character information, you can see range potency has a blue little pistol. So any weapon with a blue background requires range potency. Any weapon with an orange background is melee, and any weapon with a yellow background is a technique weapon. All right, so that is how you identify, oh, which potencies do I actually need? Now, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, okay, Carol, what augments did you actually put onto your armors? Because, there's 7 augment slots, and next month we're actually getting 8 augment slots. So as a starter player or as a new player, what augments should I be putting in? I see that you have some super OP augments over here, but I can't afford a Lars augment. I can't afford the Ratty augment. I don't even have 10 million Meseta. I can't afford any of this stuff. That's perfectly fine. We all have to start somewhere, right? We have to build our basic gear in order to farm content, in order to make money, right? You got to spend a little bit of money to make more money. And as we can see over here, we will be using all LC augments with the exception of a DP augment over here, because remember, these DP augments you actually get from Masquerade. It doesn't matter which version of Masquerade you do, you can literally do floor 1 of Masquerade over and over if you want to. However, I do believe the majority of players will be able to get to Masquerade floor 50-ish, 40 to 50 very easily, very comfortably. And of course, if you do want to spend the time and the effort and are a little bit more skilled at the game, you can definitely push all the way to 90s, possibly even try to beat level 100. Level 100 is very challenging. However, before that, up to floor 99 is actually very possible for a lot of players, as it isn't absolutely insane. Floor 100 is where Sega turns the dial and makes it into impossible mode, and that is where you get your ass whooped. As you may have noticed from my video, I got my ass kicked on floor 100. I died over 100 times with my min-max gear, so it's not so easy. But nevertheless, the most important LC augments that you want to put onto your armors as well as your weapons are the ones that are 5-star. So when you search for your LC augments, simply sort by rarity, and then you're going to see in the top there are 5 augments right here. There's the Gland Gladiusol LC, the Lux Hal Finale LC, the Gland Gigas Maste LC, the Grand Dreadkeeper 2 LC, as well as the Giga Tri-L LC. These 5 are mandatory. You have to use these 5 LC augments on all your pieces of gear, with the exception of your weapon. The reason I say this is because, well, your weapon actually has 3 slots taken up already, so you only have 4 slots available. So things get a little bit more complicated with your armors, because your armors have 7 slots. So you filled 5 slots with the essentials over here, but you still have 2 slots available. As you can see, I'm actually using the Hystera Domina LC, simply because it gives me the most potency at 3.25%, as well as the potency floor increase of 2.75%, but I do take a hit to my damage resistance of -1%. But personally, I think this is probably your best bet. It's kind of the best of all worlds, other than the fact that you do take a little bit more damage. But, you know, especially if you got your armor maxed out at plus 90, you get quite a lot of defense stat at 143 defense per piece of armor. So that 1% isn't that bad. It's not the end of the world. And then as for the other augment, I do use Precision DP. Again, this depends on what type of weapon you're using. You can use Melee DP, Precision DP, or Technique DP, because this does give me 20 HP, 5 PP, as well as 4% potency of whatever potency type that I choose. Keep in mind that there are several DP augments that you can choose from. So when we head over here to my material storage and I search DP, you can actually see there is a Mel Raw Doable DP, a Raw Tech, as well as a Mel Tech. So if you are in the situation where you need 2 different potency types, let's say that you like to play the Katana Braver, but you also like to use the Rod as a force, then in that case you can use the Mel Tech Doable DP, which gives you 4% potency for melee weapons as well as technique weapons, so this covers both bases. But nevertheless, once you have 269% potency, you can very comfortably farm most of the entry content, which will allow you to farm for most of the end game content, alright? So we do have to take baby steps over here. You can't just go from entry gear and immediately start farming the end game content to try to get all of the best in slot gear, because, well, unfortunately the game doesn't work like that. So you are going to need to take some baby steps and make your Acosalia weapon and your Acostasis armors first, and then you can start working on all of your different augments. So for the average player, you know, you don't play this game that much, you're just playing like an hour a week or like less than 3 to 5 hours a week, then, you know, this is fine. You don't need any crazy gear, because the chances of you doing Masquerade, of doing Malevolent, Darkfalls, Dalian, and all of that stuff is probably very low, and you're probably not going to be doing that type of content that often. And then, of course, when there is the urgent quest, I do understand that the urgent quest right now is Malevolent Darkfalls Aegis. Just make sure that you actually utilize your Mars. For those who don't know what Mars is, when you're progressing through the story, I believe you get it at like chapter 2. You get a tutorial when you talk to the class counter, and they tell you, hey, you can unlock your Mars skills now. So when you head over to the Mars skills, there is Mars skill learning over here, where you can actually allocate a bunch of points in order to increase a bunch of your stats when you use Mars. For those who don't know what Mars is, it's literally a Gundam suit. You summon a Gundam suit and you can beat up people, and it's really, really cool. But the main thing that a lot of people forget to do, and why they think Mars is super weak, is they don't actually upgrade their potency over here. There's potency up, there's crit rate up, there's HP up, crit damage. There's a lot of stats over here that you can increase, and don't worry, you can actually learn everything. You get enough skill points to learn everything in the skill tree. You can see I have 2 points available here because I didn't learn vertical thrust as well as a Garm risky style because I don't like them, but you do get enough points to learn everything. Now, in order to earn more points, you simply go over here to the Mars skill point exchange, and you can turn all of your Mars bars or your Mars updaters into additional points. As you can see, I've got 1,777. You probably have several hundred already, and you can turn all of those into extra skill points and max that out. Now, a lot of people ask me, how do you actually use Mars? You have to go to your sub palette over here. So for those who don't know how to go to sub palette, you simply press escape or start, and then you go here to gear/sub palette, and then you can go over here to sub palette, right? You simply click on an empty slot and you'll see right here there is Mars. You can simply plop the Mars onto your sub palette, and when it's fully charged, you click on it and you can activate Mars. Now, don't forget, you can actually use your Mars when it's at 25%. You don't have to wait for it to get to 100%. Once it's at 25%, if you need to use it or if you want to use it, you can just activate it and you summon your Gundam. Now, there are multiple weapons for your Mars. As you can see, when you go to your Mars palette over here, there are 4 different weapons. You can choose what weapons you want to use, but you have to set this in town. And then once your weapons are all set, then when you're going out and beating up people, then when you summon Mars, this will determine what weapons you use. I personally think Garm is very, very good because you literally just hold down left click and you do massive amounts of damage, and there is inbuilt lifesteal on this weapon as long as you learn the skill. So this is super, super useful. Now, a lot of people like Hydra because when you hold down your weapon action, you summon a gigantic laser beam or a railgun, which does millions of damage, which is absolutely super satisfying. However, understand that it does take a while to charge up, and you are very vulnerable while you are charging up your Hydra. So in conclusion, if you're a super casual player, aim for 269% potency. If you can achieve this, congratulations, you're good to go. Now, if you're more of a mid-core player, you want to aim for about 300 to 330% potency. Around that range would be really good. It's quite simple to hit that range. All you need to do is actually just replace your LC augments over here with the actual full-blown augments. That does take a little bit of time to farm for these, as many of these augments require you to farm a Gladiasoul, and then you need to upgrade your Gladiasoul into a Grand Gladiasoul. So there's many mini steps in order to get there. However, since we do have those augment transfer passes, just understand that all of the progress that you make on this piece of armor or this piece of gear, when a new piece of gear comes out, you can just transfer all of them over. So all of your effort, all of that farming is not wasted. But now if you want to go above and beyond and you want to hit min-max territory, maybe you are very competitive, you want to be the best of the best, then you're going to be looking at something along the lines of 386% potency, plus or minus a little bit depending on what build you use, whether you want more floor potency, whether you want more raw potency, and of course it is dependent on what class you're playing. For example, if you're a Slayer, you don't really care about floor potency because you have massive amounts of crit chance, so you can just crit your way to victory. But at the end of the day, it all depends on you. Depends what type of player you are, what you want to achieve in this game. Obviously, the more geared you are, the easier the content's gonna be, and the more options you have of different content that you can farm. For example, if you are still using the starter gear, there will be many different game modes that you do not have access to simply because you are not strong enough to clear it. However, as you get stronger, there's going to be more and more options so that, hey, if you're bored with a certain game mode, you can always switch to different game modes. So that definitely is an incentive to get stronger. Special thanks to all the members for supporting the channel. It really means a lot to me. Thank you again. But yeah, that's all I wanted to cover in today's video. Hopefully you guys found it helpful. If you did, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Bye.